All right. Hey there, hi there, ho there. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Ralph Hayes Jr., RHJunior Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet through a series of tubes, imitating a boob tube known as YouTube, bringing you another broadcast at an irregular interval of my little show I like to call Spleen Squeezins. All rights reserved unless said otherwise. Film before a barely live studio audience. Ow, alright. I wanted to do this show at midnight last night. I got up. I sat down in front of the computer. I passed out. I was shut down. I basically had to go back to bed, and I slept until like 2 this afternoon. And then I spent a lot of hours just sitting in front of my computer going, again. So, you know, this is me. This is my life. Okay, I have got several commissions to work on. Got some commissions, Wild Wired Weasel, that have been sitting collecting dust for a while. And I think I shall try and get at least one of those done for him to start things off. Talk a little politics, talk a little culture, talk a little religion, talk a little this, talk a little that. Pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little. That's what it's all about. Huh. And we turn off the header, and we got the slideshow going. Yeah, we need more. I need more slides for my slideshow. I really do. Really ought to get some. It would be nice. Yay. And I turn back, and I turn on the station, and I've got an audience of 1. Which is probably me. I'm never sure. Is this one person watching? Is that me? Or is that somebody else? Or does it automatically count me? Or is it because I'm looking at the stream page that is sitting here going, we're watching you? I don't know. I'm never able to tell for sure. For those of you who are listening out there, please keep me updated. Keep me, talk to the channel. Chat in the channel. And, if the music is too loud, tell me. If the voice is too soft, tell me. Homie needs to know. And I do not have a system where I can monitor my own output. Well, I could technically, but it comes behind, and like a half second after I speak, so you get that echo effect, and I start tripping. You think that doing a tongue twister is hard? Try doing it with your own voice echoing in your ears. It goes all sorts of interesting places. Let's see. More interesting news. Let's see what's interesting in the news. Here, I'm going to turn down the music a little bit. It's just, I'm never quite sure where to put the music in this audio-wise. I don't know. But tell me if you can hear, please keep me updated. Okay, for some reason Facebook is not updating. It's buggered up. It's been a month. It's been a year for foundational systems in the internet crapping out. All right, I've put a notice in Twitter. Facebook won't let me update for some reason. Let me try updating Facebook again here. That feature isn't available right now. Facebook, screw you. Yeah. Hello, Mark Harris. Good evening. It's an audience of one, so I guess it is one person. Hooray. Oh, let's see. What did I want to talk? Okay, there's a fellow on Facebook. There is a fellow on Facebook who is reposting some of my old comic strips. That's fine. As I've always stated, it's public domain stuff. It's Creative Commons license, attribution license. And so he's free to repost it. Let me see if I can find his name here. James Walt? No, that's not him. Well, anyway, right now he is currently going through. He's sequentially posting the comic strips from Goblin Hollow, from the Goblin Hollow archives, and he is currently going through the arc. Through the arc with Penny and the Evangelist. This was one of my more conflicted and controversial arcs in the comic strips because of how it played out, and I will not pretend in the least that I've got issues, and yeah, and anything I have to say, I am no gospel authority. You know what I'm saying? I am no moral authority. So take anything I say for any reason, with a great big huge honking, cubic block of salt. Do your own thinking, do your own Bible study, and maybe there are other people that you can discuss things with like that, like the church, better with than somebody who is literally a shut-in and cannot attend anymore. But the Penny story arc was basically, I wanted to get into how Penny actually was supposed to. She was supposed to be a conflicted character. She was a Christian. Her family is Christian. She comes from a Christian background, and she was going into a rebellious phase as a teenager. The surly, snotty teenage daughter ages. Those fun times, and well, the people I expect, the people I expected, I got a lot of people upset over the story, but not the ones I expected. I expected more Christians to step forward and say, "What the heck's wrong with this girl? And what the heck's wrong with you?" Instead, I got a lot of people who took her. Most of the people who, in fact, I think the only people who commented were people who were taking Penny's side and complaining, that I was stereotyping her as being, she's not really a troubled child, and that I was being too self-righteous and sanctimonious with condemning her behavior, and it painted an interesting. It was a very important lesson for me in teaching me just how different the outside world, or the modern current world, views certain issues that a church insider, not even necessarily basically put, that that there is a growing gap between the modern perspective on things and the traditionalist perspective on things. And I was raised in a very traditional household. And I'll be the first to say, sometimes to a fault, it was traditional. You don't realize how far outside of the pond you are until it's pushed into your face. In the story arc, Penny is usually acting. She's the things that my generation and my parents and adults of my generation and even the children of my generation, my parents, people my age, and the kids of people my age, we have regarded many of the things that Penny was doing as warning signs. She was surly, disrespectful. She was running around. She was dressing, shall we say, provocatively. In every sense of the word, provocative. Both in the sense of trying to be sexually provocative, and also, there's more than one way to be provocative. There's sexually provocative, where, and then there's also this will make mommy and daddy mad provocative. So you get what I'm saying there. Just because when I say something's provocative, that doesn't necessarily mean sexually. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. And she was, there was at least one street where she was basically sucking face with her boyfriend right on the front porch. Just practically climbing all over him. And those are the things that people in my generation, those are the things where people were saying, the child's already a troubled child. She's not gotten pregnant yet. She's not gotten arrested yet. She's not gotten in real trouble yet. But in my day and age, you had to be kind of stupid to not see somebody dressing rebelliously, acting rebelliously, speaking rebelliously, and not conclude that there was a problem. But in this day and age, everybody shrugged off her behavior. All the readers were apparently shrugging off her behavior as normal, and oh well, within tolerances. In the modern parlance, apparently, she's not a troubled teen until she has a second child out of wedlock. That's the impression I came away with. Well, she hasn't caught HIV yet. She's not that troubled. She hasn't gotten hooked on heroin yet. She hasn't blown up a bank. Let's just say the bar for being a troubled child has apparently gotten a little bit higher lately, and it's a little distressing. Because in the story, it turns out part of the reason that Penny has become so surly and uncooperative and rebellious, doesn't want anything to do with the church, is because a really nasty set of circumstances in her past. Is that when she was a little girl, when she's about 10 or 11, she had a best friend, and it turned out her best friend had a serious emotional problems of the chemical kind, of the medical kind. And she took pills to stabilize her emotions, and along comes a group of holy rollers who managed to convince the kid's parents that she didn't need this medicine. That she was all these pills for AD&D and for depression and everything. We're all quackery, and this is the devil's medicine, and so she went off the pills and destabilized, and she ended up, and the girl committed suicide. Meanwhile, the Holy Rollers, they had done their tambourine whacking in the area, and they moved on with her, leaving her, her neighborhood and her family with a dead little girl. And just say something like that. I figured that would be the sort of thing that would decidedly make you hostile towards a great portion of organized religion. And now Penny's just torn up inside because she just watched a bunch of religious loonies put her friend in an early grave, and now there's nobody around to help her through her grief. Nobody's sensible, and it all comes to a head in the story arc when she's when she's more or less dragged to church again by her sister and brother-in-law, and surprise, surprise, here comes another slick-looking televangelist, talking about how horrible teenagers are today. Thank you so much for your donation, so we can keep your heathen offspring in line. Here, pass the hat. I've seen people like this. I've met people like this. Look. I will not lie to you. I am a son of a pastor. I'm a son of a Baptist pastor, and the things I have seen. I've seen highs and lows, angels and demons. I swear I have. I have seen people who would give you the last shirt off their back. I have seen preachers who sacrificed everything to try and help those in their community, and I've seen others that just made my skin want to crawl. I've seen, stereotypical almost. I went to one church in it was just a little bitty 20-member church, one of those teeny tiny ones out in West Virginia, and they had a guest speaker, and this guest speaker had what had to be this guy was preaching to a room full of people who, if they scoop their money together, they might be able to buy you lunch. And he walks in, he had rings on every finger. I am not lying, I'm not exaggerating. He had big, chunky gemstone rings on each and every finger. He had his gold tie, and a beautiful suit that had to be hundreds of dollars. I don't know from suits, but it was well, it fit him well, and it looked real good. So I'm figuring it was tailor-made at least. And even had his hair slicked back, pompadour, that televangelist pompadour that nobody wants to wear ever since Jerry Falwell. And here he was 10 years down the road still wearing it. And I took an immediate disliking to him just looking at him. This man walked through the door wearing the wealth of an entire community on his fingers. And it just set me off. And I've seen other people, they stood up there. There was a pastor of a. There's a Christian school in. I don't know if it's just a college or a high school. I think it's just a high school. There's a Christian school and high school close nearby. I attended their nativity. My mother spent about a year or so working as one of their teachers, and. After the Christmas service, after the kids did their whole nativity thing, The preacher got up and he started talking about all the things oh, we're so glad that you can donate your funds to help us, raise this next generation, right? And then he started going off about these stories. At the time, there was, a big to-do. Supposedly, some kid had written a fantasy about shooting his teacher, and the zero tolerance people, just flipped their lids over it. And it was all over the place. Do you know there was a 6-year-old child plotting the murder of his kindergarten teacher? Just getting the old grannies in the front row whipped up. Without your funding, your children will turn out like this too. And I just sort of sat back there, and I won't lie. I had not been a devout churchgoer in some time. But one half of me wants to give him the doubt. The other half of me is going, eh. It was just yeah, sleazy. I have seen too much on both sides, I think. But anyway, the whole story arc with Penny, that is a lot of drama, and I am a little disappointed that more devout Christians didn't step up, and try and take me to task, because for the opposite side of the argument. And that I was, everybody was talking about how hard I was being on Penny, because nobody stepped forward and said, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe he's not exactly giving the evangelists and preachers and teachers a fair shake here either." Nobody called me on, everybody wanted to tap me for leaning too far to the right, but nobody wanted to tap me for leaning too far to the left. I fully expected my father to start writing me, "Son, what is this here?" But no, not a word, not a peep, not a sound. Everybody loves a preacher who sacrifices and gives and gives and gives and helps and who's gentle and compassionate, caring, kind. Nobody gives any consideration for the preacher who is out there preaching hellfire and brimstone at a time when it is desperately needed. Even the Bible says, some are won over through compassion, others are won over through, the fear of God. It's not one or the other. And both messages are needed. Our God is a merciful, loving, and benevolent God, but He is also a righteous God. And if we aren't questioning ourselves about our own virtues, we're not doing right. And even a messed up man like me knows this much. It sort of ground my gears a little bit that I could prop up a minister who's, I hate to use the term straw man. He was a little bit of a straw man, but he was also an example of some of the worst you see in the in evangelism. And and it actually does exist. But it bugged me that I couldn't, it bugged me that I could, I could criticize the preacher all day long, but I couldn't have anybody take the slightly trashy foul-mouthed teenage brat to task. There's this one strip, she blows up after the service. She reads the Minister of the Riot Act, and I have to hold. She pointed out a lot of things and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, she really told him," and then then she goes off even further off the road. They're marching out of church. She's out there in the parking lot cussing up a storm, and she gets smacked across the mouth for it. And all of a sudden, everybody in the just everybody inhaled all at once, sucked all the air out of the internet. How dare she slap her? Yeah, that is the mace. That is the basics of what she said. The girl took it on herself to stop taking the pills because the preacher this televangelist gassed her up and convinced her that that the medicine she was taking was ungodly. But the general point holds. The preacher, the televangelist did it. Got on this track. He didn't know what he was talking about. He did it for the sake of sensationalism, and a little girl died. Paid the price for it. You got people out there that, there are people out there that won't even take you to a hospital because, have faith in God to heal you. I have faith in God that He gave us doctors. Yeah, about the Warcrafter. I'm still working on the next chapter of the Warcrafter. Yes. Moving on. The reason I'm talking about this right now is that there's a fellow on Facebook who's been posting back issues of my comics. The archives. He's running through the Goblin Hollow strips, about 2 or 3 at a time, and I'm flattered. Full permission. You want to run the comic strips? Go ahead. Like I said, it's as I've been posting over and over and over again, is that my stuff is under Creative Commons Attribution License, which means you can use it so long as you give me attribution as the original artist. It generally just saved me a lot of time from people calling me up, do you mind if I use this in our Sunday school paper? Do you mind if I use this in this, draw this picture on my kid's nursery wall? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I should care. But, anyway. Let's see. Loop-de-loop. Let's see. Oh my. I won't lie, I don't know how long I'm going to be on. Don't know. Do not know. I tried to get up last night. I had a post I was going to do a showing at midnight. Because, I lay down, I slept most of the day, and I got up, it was about midnight. Hey, I'll go. And then I sat down in front of the computer and just. I ended up sleeping another day, and here I am now. World Weasel. I really should have started numbering these instead of just. I need. Oh well. Now, also as much as these cogs, I don't know. It's like he's got 2 or 3 different styles, and he hasn't really settled on one. You know, the first one looks more like a robot from. Going by the description, it looks more like a regular robot from Short Circuit. This guy, and yet this next one over is like, he looks like he should be reading. You know, going by the descriptions again, he looks like he should be reading lines. You know, the Illudium Space Modulator. Okay, let's see here. Okay, excuse me. Oh, darn. Drop something. Okay, give me just a second here. I'll be right back. Okay, just had to. The Illudium for Space Modulator. I assume I'm reading it right. Let's see here. Kickstarters. Weird Wild Weasel. Wild Wild Weasel. You got the Wild Wild Weasel. Wild Wild Weasel. Got another case of him sending a bunch of stuff that's basically about their personalities. You know, I don't need to know about their personality so much. I need to know what they look like. I keep saying this, nobody seems to. Nobody quite seems to get the point I'm making. Homunculus, homunculus. this is still the homunculus. Nature of coglings. Here we go. I have the darndest time trying to visualize what this guy is visualizing. I really do. Imagine being. Let me describe to you what it's like sometimes being commissioned for somebody who doesn't know how to describe something. Imagine being commissioned to draw a picture by MC Escher. And all you have to go on is the written description, the verbal description he gives you of the picture he wants, that he sees in his mind's eye. That's what it's like. I'm eyeballing this right now. I'm just really. I'm just guessing, really. You ever seen that episode of The Simpsons where Homer tries to design a car? It's close to that sometimes. This commission, he says, I like the commissions, I like the money, but man, translating what he's envisioning into I have enough trouble trying to translate what I visualize into a visual medium. It's a good thing I don't get too many, I don't get too many contracts from non-English speakers. Like, the British. I'd end up killing somebody before the day was out. Oh, you silly colonists, saying all these funny words. You say gasoline when you mean petrol. You say elevator when you mean lift. You say face when you mean slappy ham. You say gun when you mean rooty tooty point and shooty. Oh, you quaint things, you. You want to start a fight, be condescending to a Yankee. Yeah, just get a little smirk, and they'll come over there and rip your British lips off. Let's see one thing. I forget what they were talking. Why don't you just, I think the guy was trying to make ramen. He said, "Why don't you just boil water in the kettle?" We don't. And the guy said, "We don't have a kettle." And the guy's all smug. He said, "What? Americans don't have kettles? How do you make tea?" And the guy like came back just in the harbor. You see a lot of Brits do they? A lot of people from the old country, Europe, especially Great Britain. Great Britain, man, the average British layperson in online is just gets absolutely smarmy, condescending attitude towards Americans and towards American culture. I've seen it over and over again, man. You get up in arms over it. Believe me. Look, Great Britain, you had an empire. You had an empire. Had, operative word. You haven't had an empire in 100 years. You had an empire that literally stretched around the world, and you screwed it up. You utterly buggered it up. You buggered it up so bad that one of your colonies, us, had to kick your ass twice. Just to teach you some manners. And then we had to come back in and bail your ass out of both World War I and World War II. I don't care how we were fighting the entire war. You only showed up near the end. Yeah, and if we hadn't showed up near the end, you'd be speaking German today. Sprechen Sie Deutsch? No? You're welcome. I'm sorry, I am just so sick of the nasty treatment that Americans get from Europeans, especially British. Getting all that attitude off of people who are so screwed up they've got weapons because they're collecting up forks and knives from people in their weapons buyback program. What the hell? Seriously, this is what they've come to. Great Britain has basically become California with shittier weather. They got a weapons buyback program where people can turn in their their knives and other sharp implements to try and lower crime. They're out there trying to serve steak with a spoon now. And they're going to look down on my country? No, piss off. You know how many? You know many? How many? You know what the largest army on Earth is? China, with a standing army of just under 2 million people, 2 million soldiers. The largest unofficial army is in America. There are approximately, what was it, 20 million gun owners, private citizens. 1.7. Let me. I'm going off memory here. 1.7 million crimes are prevented or halted by private citizens bearing arms in this country. Any metric you care to name. Any metric you care to name. I'll put America up against any other country in the world. If we ain't in first place, it's either only by a hair or by a technicality. Sorry, I just get a little wound up about that. No, that's one of the commissions for. That's one of the commissions for Wild Wild Razor that's been sitting for a while. I've been collecting dust. I'm trying to shake the dust off and at least start getting rolling. For some reason, I really have trouble visualizing what it is he or his partner describe. I don't know what it is. Probably just me. Let's face it, back in the day, England was an empire. Today, it's an island punching several belts above its weight. Someday, America's fate will be similar. Because we made enough of the same mistakes that every other empire has. And eventually we'll pay the price. Watched Ant-Man and the Wasp on Netflix last night. Well, the night before last. It was no blockbuster, but it was pretty good. I have to say, I watched Thor Ragnarok too. You know, the last Thor movie. Not a big thrill. They went too far. You know, in the first movie, Thor was all yo, these and thous, and you know, forsooths, and you know, and it's kind of serious. You know, even you know, they had a lot of slapstick in there, but it played off well across that, you know, that it played well off of that counter to that bombastic Victorian English pomposity, for lack of a better word. But in Thor Ragnarok, they had him cracking wise like he was a surfer dude. They pushed a little too hard for the humor, is what I'm saying. Overdid it a bit, overdid it a lot, and you know, Thor lost a lot of his charm. Of course, there's also the fact that they've been playing up how treacherous Loki is, and they've got him talking. That one scene where they had them talking about how Loki, when he was a child, he would disguise himself as a snake, and Thor would pick him up, and then Loki would bite him, just because, you know, just to show how mean he was. I'm sorry, that undermined a lot of the, you know, the sympathy that, to be fair, Loki kind of earned over the previous movies. You got to understand. You look back on it, and for all the, you know, even though Loki was well, he was a bad guy. He was also a guy who got screwed. When he was a baby, he was kidnapped from the Frost Giants. Odin and his armies invaded, and when they left, they had kidnapped a baby, which was baby Loki, and they took Loki in and never told him the truth, raised him up to think that he was an Asgardian, taught him to hate his own people. They were at war with they were still at war with the Ice Titans, you know, with the Ice Giants, and Loki had been raised to think of his own people as the enemy, unknowingly. And all this time, on top of that, he's treated like the second favorite son. You know, Daddy loved Thor more. And so Loki, you know, goes, screw it, I'm going for the throne. He gets the throne, and the first thing he does is he does what he thought his father would have wanted. He goes to war with the Ice Giants, planning on wiping them out. And of course, here comes Thor with a big change of heart. You know, stops him, pounds him flat, throws him off the bridge. You know, it's like, well, crap. Family issues, you know what I'm saying? And he falls into the clutches of Thanos. So at some point you got to have a little bit of sympathy for the guy. But in this last movie, that he was a vicious dick even when he was a little boy, and I'm like, this is a little much. Because the past several movies, Thor's been going, we were brothers together, we played together as children, and now they undermine that with, well, he tried to bite me as a poisonous snake when I was a kid. That was just kind of guy he always was. Yeah, yeah, but I've been following a fan fiction of it's called Heroes Assemble. Well, I've seen a couple of different versions. And wait, there's one that's called Heroes Assemble, which is a crossover with Harry Potter, and then there's Damaged Defenders, which Damaged Defenders is one where the writer goes into more depth about just how much of a bunch of wounded warriors the Avengers really are, if you step back and take a look. And it starts with the invasion of New York, and in the middle of the battle, Thor realizes Loki's eyes aren't blue. And he realizes that Loki has been, he was brainwashed by somebody, and when they defeated him, they figured that out and broke the brainwashing. And they realized, and then they started and then he started telling more of the story of their childhood together, under Odin, and the other Avengers are going, this Odin guy's an asshole. And Odin, they eventually end up confronting Odin about the fact that he's basically a child abuser, and Freya, Odin's wife, basically says, well, finally somebody said it, and she basically takes her husband and by the ear boxes him around for a little bit and gets him to behave himself. And in Damaged Defenders, Loki ends up as one of the Avengers. And undergoing heavy therapy, along with Bruce Banner. And when they start digging into the meat of Bruce Banner and the Hulk's background, and they start realizing this guy's screwed up too, and they go into Bucky Barnes and basically it just runs down the list of the Avengers, and they realize these it's basically a big subversion of the old there are no therapists in the heroing world. Because basically it boils down to, they realize they all some of the most powerful heroes on Earth, and they also have epic level issues, every last one of them, and issues that are real and that would have made lesser men snap like twigs. Natasha, she was raised from childhood to be a Russian assassin. They sterilized her so that she couldn't have children, just to make sure that she wouldn't have any divisions of loyalty. She was routinely tortured, brainwashed. She was basically put through a childhood of hell. Bruce Banner, it turns out he was an abused child too. His father was, that's canon actually. His Bruce Banner's father, he was a wife beater. He was also paranoid, delusionally. He was intimidated by the fact his son was so much smarter than he was, and decided to beat that out of him. Ended up killing his wife in front of his son and getting off scot-free because they couldn't squeeze it out of him in the courtroom. So yeah, issues. And you got Tony Stark with his issues. And then, well, you just run down the list. It's not the only story that's, it's the only one that really makes that the central focus. But there are a lot of fan fiction stories that just basically look into that and go, these guys, they've been screwed over by life in many ways. They need help. Yeah. Oh, this is uncomfortable. Yeah. I complained about the Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man movie. I've been saying for years, ever since it came out, that is not Peter Parker. And guess what? You know why it's not Peter Parker? Is because the entire character is basically lifted not from Peter Parker, but from Miles Morales, the replacement Peter Parker they came up with. Token black Mexican, black Hispanic Peter Parker substitute. And apparently, since the ultimate Spider-Man is now Miles Morales, black Hispanic token figure, they took Peter Parker and basically gave him Miles Morales' backstory. For the most part, it's Miles Morales that is going to a what do you call them? Flag schools. Whatever, for super intelligent kids, and it's Miles Morales that has the fat wacky Chinese sidekick, and it's Miles Morales in the comics that has and so on and down and so on and forth. They decided to they're trying to push Miles Morales is what it is, and they figure if they mishmashed the original Peter Parker up with Miles Morales, they could, just sort of poke it down our throats with their fingers. I like how they, and I've seen clips of the Spider-Verse animated movie. And I like how they show the Peter Parker in that way, just grand. They show him, as being old, middle-aged, with graying hair and a pot belly. and he's divorced, and and his life's all washed up, blah 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 blah. Before he meets Miles Morales, and I'm like, they're really trying to kill off Peter Parker. How the hell would you get a potbelly? You spend every evening parkouring and trapezing through New York City from end to end, and getting in hand-to-hand fights with purse snatchers, muggers, bank robbers, and supervillains. I don't care if you live on nothing but pizza and cream horns. You are not going to get a potbelly. But no, they got to show him as a sad, washed-up loser, so that Miles looks, better by comparison. On an entirely different. I would love to see a photograph of the bullpen right now. The Marvel bullpen. I want to see how much estrogen is back behind that door. I bet you there's not one testicle within the first 20 paces. Yeah, I said it. I recently saw a photograph of the staff of Candy Crush. Literally, not a single man there. No, not one. They had like 20 or 30 people in the picture. Well, maybe 20, but every last one of them, middle-aged woman. I saw a photograph of the staff of the Huffington Post. Same story. All women. You see, that's what they call diversity. Isn't that lovely? What the hell happened? How did it become feasible? The so-called modern film. How did that become even feasible as a concept to people? How dysfunctional do you have to be to auto-hate half the species? What was it? In the 1920s, in the 1910s, in 1918, women were going around. We want equal rights. We want the vote. Here in 2018, what have we got? These troll-looking creatures going on.
Now we shall feed on man flesh.
Just how the heck did that become a feasible concept? How did that become anybody's concept of feminism? Look, most of the thing, leftism. Most of leftism is attributable to human sinful nature. Look, feminism, but not feminism. Socialism. Socialism, socialism, Marxism, collectivism, however you want to call it, it's all the same crap. The only really difference is whether they've progressed from tricking people into voting for it and have gone to using tire irons to make it by force. But it's all social. How do it's easy to figure out how socialism arose. Because it's very simple. You couple the idea of spite and envy. That's all it is. It's envy of anybody who has more than you. How did anything as stupid as fiat currency rise to power? Simple. Because, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. That's all it is borrowing against money that you don't have. Printing receipts for it now, so that you can spend the receipts and never have to pay them back. That's all fiat currency is. It's borrowing money. It's just another version of the old credit card. Spending money you don't have until people stop accepting until they stop accepting the credit card and everything blows up in your face. But feminism, modern feminism, how did that happen? I can't see any woman finding any happiness in that, any pleasure in that. Now, I can see them going for the sexual licentiousness that feminism pushed, because people are like that. Back in the day, smash monogamy. That was their big thing. But even the most militant feminist back then wasn't about to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And like it or not, feminism is dependency. I'm a victim, you need to take care of me. It's not up to me to behave responsibly, it's all up to you. Really, you look at all their pet issues. Tell those men to stop bothering me. Well, if you didn't dress like a hoochie mama, you're putting it all on me. Don't you tell me to behave. Tell them to behave themselves. Who's going to take care of this baby that I'm carrying and planning on aborting? Well, lady, if you would stop fucking, you would stop having babies you don't want. How dare you put this on me? They want to have all the fun and not pay the consequences. They want the man, they talk about the independence, but what they want is for them to have all the fun and for the men to pay all the costs. But what is this? Is these women who are just determined to destroy the very thing that's padding their lifestyle? You know, this stupid bimbo they've got playing Captain Marvel. It was obviously going to be another mediocre movie. It was probably going to be, it was going to be another Ant-Man. It was basically going to be another Ant-Man. It was nothing big, nothing small, nothing to make a big fuss about. But this bimbo that was picked out to play the lead decided to grab the social justice warrior flag and run with it. She grabbed that ball and ran. She started stomping all around. Oh, my character is better than all the male characters put together. And if you don't like my movie, you're a sexist, misogynist, blah 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 blah. She was going to do the job of the entire Ghostbusters reboot all by herself for her movie. And guess what? Now none of the guys. Generally it's the guys who goes and see these superhero movies, and now none of the guys want to go see it. They don't want to go to a movie and have some resting bitch face feminist sneering down at them from a 50-foot wide screen. They don't want that. Nobody wants that. The Further Adventures of Resting Bitch Face Woman. And the guy said no, and people stayed away in droves, and their projected revenue just fell through the floor. The balloon went up, and then it went all the way back down to the ground. But how did this happen, though? This is my question. How did it reach a point where women were willing to go along with something that clearly was going to screw them over? Because even the stupidest kid knows that you don't roast the goose that lays the golden eggs. But, the feminist approach is to treat the person that foots the bill like shit. To some extent, that's socialism, too. They see the rich and prosperous. Their first idea. What is this? What is this cow-faced? What is it? Occasional cortex, whatever her name is. Her first plan was basically to loot all the rich to pay for everything. Here, let me spell it out for you. They did the numbers. If we looted every millionaire in the United States, all of them, everybody who was worth $1 million or more, every household that was worth $1 million or more, if we looted them, if we took all their money, if we took all their property and their land and the cars and the vehicles and their businesses and everything, and sold it off the block, and turned it all back into cash, we would have enough money to run the country for just under a year. At which point, then, we'd be really hosed. This is their solution every single time. It's the same solution every single time. Eat the rich. Even a cannibal knows that you need to leave a few of them, to last till next meal. not a socialist. How did this cow of a woman... Have you seen this horse-faced bimbo? And then there's the woman that she's a Muslim. She's in Congress. This is interesting. Back during you follow the money. Back during Obama's administration, Obama dumped several, something like 500,000. Well, I forget how many. How many did he dump? Well, he dumped hundreds of thousands of quote unquote refugees from the Mideast into one congressional district. Come this election, what a surprise! We've got a woman from that district, a Muslim woman from that district, exact same district, who got elected to Congress. What a surprise! The only reason that they, elected a woman this time is because they figured, putting in a female Muslim would get it just a little bit further under the radar. He found a whole new way. Give Obama credit. He found a whole new way to stuff a ballot box. I'm gonna go ahead and send what I have here to Wild Wild Readers to see what this is far from done. I've still got to put in a background, and those scenes supposed to be on the deck of the bridge of a ship, and he's also supposed to be wearing a toga, a cloak kind of thing, and a couple of weapons. But anyway, this is just the okay. Oh, what is it with the frickin' feed? Commissions. Weird Wild People. I'm itchy. Itch on the inside of my knee. Feel old and fat and slow and useless. Yeah, Dems have been using illegals for voters since 1965. I bet none of them had the brilliant idea of calling them refugees, cramming them all into one district to tip the voting balance in one direction. Or if they did, they didn't have the nerve to pull it off. Well, actually, this is what the Libertarians have been proposing. This is their New Hampshire proposal. The New Hampshire Party, the Libertarian Party of the United States, has been proposing that as many Libertarians as can pledge to move to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is apparently the most libertarian state, as in there are more libertarians in office there than anywhere else. If they can pack New Hampshire with a bunch of libertarian voting families, the state of New Hampshire will swing libertarian, which they predict would help initiate a cascade effect in the rest of the country, making it more possible for libertarian candidates to get elected. Yeah, again, that's Texas becoming a Democrat stronghold due to invasion. That's not planned. That's just an inevitable outcome of stupid people migrating. I want to go someplace where it's better, but I'm going to bring everything along that made things worse. Yeah. How do you stop this? Is there any way to stop it? I don't know. I have no idea of how you would go about stopping this demographic chicanery, other than to use it ourselves. If the Libertarians succeed in taking New Hampshire that way, you better believe the Democrats will be out there with a constitutional amendment to try and prevent it from happening again. If Mexican illegals were voting Republican, you'd be able to see the wall down south from space. There'd be frickin' laser turrets and robot guards patrolling it. We can hope they won't flip. We can hope that Texas won't flip. But it's not the way the House bets. My oh my. Excuse me. You know all those hashtag trends and challenges that came out? I will admit, to my surprise, I've seen a couple come out recently. There's one in particular I'm thinking of that have really impressed me. You know, faith in humanity restored kind of things. I forget what the hashtag is called. I think it's hashtag pickup, hashtag... well, it's something like that. There's a hashtag. The hashtag goes is that you find a place that's like littered. You do a before and after. You take a photograph, and then you clean it up, and then you take an after. And people are turning in as entire beaches are being cleaned, roadsides, parks, just road stop. People are just going out and cleaning up, bagging it up, and just making the world a better place, just for a hashtag. And I'm like, yes, this is what it's for. This is what it can do. I'm sorry, for every time I hear, these things, these stories are always the important ones. These are the real important ones. The stories of people who use chat to track down somebody who's to talk somebody down from committing suicide, and help the cops to track them down before they hurt themselves. People use Facebook to track down missing children. The ones who are using hashtags to encourage people to pick up trash and to clean up their neighborhoods. And every time you start to get down, you'll see a little bit of something like this. When I see something like that, I'm thinking, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, this is Jesus just tapping me on the shoulder. When I'm at my lowest, Jesus just tapping me on the shoulder. See here. There's something worth saving there. There's something worth something there. It's not all is lost. There's still some good out there. Then you see these stories, people who who dedicate hours to rescuing animals that I would have, my solution would have been, I kid you not. But they would go out and they find these poor suffering animals and they nurse them back to health and give them to families and beautiful animals. Make wonderful, and they turn out these wonderful pets, and and you go, thank you, Jesus, thank you for reminding me there's just a little bit of decency in the world left. You see this? I remember seeing that picture of this. I forget who she was. Was she a rock star or an actress or what? Just feeding a bottle of water to this swollen-bellied little black boy, and they showed the picture 5 years later. He's apparently been foster adopted by this woman, and he's as hale and hearty, just going great guns. And I'm like, yes, good stuff, good stuff. My favorite story is about Trump. The time he heard there was a little boy. Needed a very particular type of open heart surgery, but the airlines couldn't or wouldn't transport him because they couldn't, for some reason they couldn't fit all of his equipment onto one of their planes. All the medical gear they would need to keep him alive for the trip. And so he said, "Man, I don't care how bombastic, how arrogant, how proud he is." He turned around and said, "Get my plane." He said, "Get my plane." And he said, "Give that boy a lift." And he flew, he sent out his private jet to fly that boy all the way across the country from New York to California. And there was another time a woman who was going through a horrible divorce, things like death threat kind of horrible divorce. And he let her stay in Trump Plaza rent free. Now, he does things big and bombastic and arrogant, but when he does good deeds, he's just as big and bombastic and arrogant with it. And that's kind of beautiful, you know what I'm saying? What can I say? I love it. But, and you hear about these actors. What was his name? What was his name? What was it? Steve Buscemi? Yeah, Steve Buscemi. TV actor. Let me pull up his image here. You know him. You've seen him in dozens of movies. I'm going to turn off this for a while. And let's see. Window capture. Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi. Hollywood actor. During the September 11th terrorist attack, after the attack happened, He used to be it turns out he used to be a volunteer firefighter in New York City, and without thinking about it, he got, the terrorist attack happened. He went over, he flew over to, he went over to New York City, went into his old fire department and said, "Hey, suit me up." And he was out there in the field. Can you imagine being somebody being rescued? You're being rescued by the New York Fire Department. You look up, it's Steve Buscemi. You'd be like, has the smoke gotten to me? That had to be a really bizarre moment for the people he helped. Everybody else going, "Nah, that's not Steve Buscemi." It's like, "Yeah, it's Steve Buscemi." I love stories like that. I love that. Sylvester Stallone, in the first Rocky, Sylvester Stallone's character, he had an aquarium with little baby turtles in it. You go to Sylvester Stallone's house today, he's got an aquarium with full-grown turtles in it. He kept the turtles. It's one of those little weird things. It's not in the same vein as the rest of the stories, but he's just crossed my mind. It's just odd little things that you think about. But the ShamWow guy, the guy that was on this commercial was with the ShamWow claws. He got arrested for possession of marijuana. That was the big story about him. But the forgotten story was, again, September 11th. The buildings came down. He was one of the first people on the site. He actually went into the buildings and into the rubble and started pulling people out. He's a stinking stoner. I'll take that stoner over half of the sober sons of bitches in New York City any day of the week. Pardon my French. Every time that Harry Potter movies, every time Hermione turned around, "Ron, Harry, language." I wanted one of them to turn around and say, "English. Do you speak it?" Anyway, let's see. Another one. If your tips on saving money starts with assuming I pay $5 for coffee every day, you already think I have more money than I do. That's the truth. You look at most of these, how to save money. Well, what most of us don't need is, most of us down here at the bottom, we don't need tips on saving money. We're very good at not spending money due to the fact we don't have any. What we need is tips on how to make the money and keep the money. How to make more money and keep it. I downloaded the tax forms yesterday. I downloaded them, and I've only skimmed over them thus far. Oh my! I don't know if it's going to be any better. The tax forms are certainly shorter. I downloaded the PDF and I looked at it. Where's the rest of it? I hope there's more than changes to the cosmetics of the thing. I'd really like to think that, hey, guess what? I'm not going to owe taxes this year. That would be nice. That would be a change of pace. I've been debating on this, how much of my, I can't really count most. The fundraiser I did, the GoFundMe, that can be counted as a gift because nobody made a donation above the minimum level. But I'm wondering if that applies to any donations made through my regular. Have I been screwing myself over by listing my regular donations as regular income? I probably have. Because, frankly, I live in fear of the IRS trying to climb up my rear end. I'm going to be appalled if it turns out that I could separate out at least the straight up donations and list them as gifts. But of course, I don't know. They probably find some reason that it doesn't qualify, and then they come here. You owe back taxes for the last 300 years. Yeah, they just uploaded Irish people try American canned meat, and yeah, I gotta agree with their assessment. They tried the spam spread and a couple others, and deviled ham and that, and yeah, those kinds of things are really survival food. The kind of thing you keep on hand, and for emergencies, and I mean serious emergencies. When you are out of everything else, including ramen. Oh, I love these questions. Oh, I love these questions here. From Quora Digest. My daughter is 5 years old. She doesn't eat vegetables at all. The only thing she eats is French fries. What should I do? Well, you do what my parents did. You sit them down and you say, you eat this or you don't get up until you do. We went too many days where my parents had to trade off who got to eat dinner that night for them to put up with that kind of nonsense. She doesn't eat it. She tries to hide it. She tries to throw it away. You paddle her behind, put her back in the seat, and say, you eat this. I'm sure it'll traumatize her little inner child, but she'll eat the veggies and she'll live. I love this. When a child is having a tantrum in public, people often comment that the parents need to control the child. Do they not realize how little there is a parent can actually do to control such behavior? For hundreds of years, people have managed this. Grab the squalling little brat, upend them, and fan their backsides. It's amazing. It's barbaric. Yeah, it works too. We knew a lesson very early on when I was you throw a tantrum in public, we'll give you a reason to cry. You embarrass us in public, we will. You embarrass us in church or in school or anywhere else, we will take you outside, pull your pants down, and paddle your backside until you have trouble sitting down. We learned quickly to stifle. your child will not die for all their screaming. You brute, you fiend, you monster. Yeah. Take some of these idiots, lock them in a room with a willful child for 24 hours. They'll have a whole new religion when they come out. You know why? You know why parents paddle their children? Because they can survive a sore bottom a lot better than they can survive being a willful little monster. They paddled the child for running off. Oh, they paddled that poor child for running around and skipping and playing. They paddled the child for running off and possibly nearly running into traffic. Last thing you want is a willful child in a dangerous situation. And it's amazing how many situations suddenly get incredibly dangerous when there's a spoiled brat involved. When I was a little bitty baby, we had a old-fashioned stove, electric stove. It had a glass window in front. And whoever designed this thing apparently didn't think insulation was important. Because it was just one pane of glass. It wasn't double layered or triple layered or anything for safety. It was just pane of glass. And that pane of glass got just as hot as the inside of the oven. Anyway, as a little bitty baby, when I was about 2 or 3 years, I was fascinated. There was a light inside, you see, so you could see what was cooking, which was the point of the window. If it was dark inside, you couldn't see nothing. And I was fascinated by that light. And every time my mother turned her back, I would get to my little toddling feet and toddle my pampered behind over to that, ooh, and with my finger outstretched. Ooh! And she'd turn around, she'd grab my hand at the last second, to keep me from getting burned. And she tried, lecture me. She'd swat my behind and send me off. And, after I got over, I'd turn right back around and do the same thing over again. It didn't matter what they'd said, what they did. Finally, Dad said, "Let him." Let him. He had to actually restrain my mother while I waddled my pudgy little way in there, and I looked over there. Ha ha! They're not going to stop me. And I walked right over stuck my finger against that glass, and Dad said it was like an air raid siren went off. I yanked my finger away from there. I stood there, big old blister on the end of my finger. Just, finally, Dad let my mom come over, and he bandaged up my finger and fixed up my finger. They paddled me then, and then they finished bandaging up my finger. And what a surprise, I finally learned the lesson. And you can't say that lesson didn't apply to several other situations. When they told me do not touch, I learned do not touch. Now imagine what if they hadn't cared enough to swat my behind when I got out of line. Imagine me coming across, say, a gas heater with an open front, or a heating coil, or, well, reach out and grab the big red shiny. I could have crippled myself. Because they can't watch me every minute. You got to put, it's not the easiest thing in the world, and if you're getting your giggles off of doing it, get the hell away from me. You discipline your kid in order to help your kid, in order to teach your kid, in order to keep your kid from hurting themselves, from doing themselves an injury. You don't do it so you can get hits on Facebook. Another thing you don't destroy their property. I've never been so angry as when I saw these parents, they got these kids, and they go in there and they videotape themselves destroying the kids' video game system, or throwing their collection of DVDs under a lawnmower or something, or crap like that. And I'm like, you son of a bitch! I hope they come back through your house with a baseball bat and find your collection of favorites. You deserve it. You give something to somebody. That's one of the things you need to teach a kid from the beginning. It's your property. You take care of it, and it's not. And nobody has the right to destroy it. That's wickedness. This is where you got so many kids that they grow up think that the government's job is to come in and break all your shit if you get out of line. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. And don't videotape it and show it to me. I'll probably kick you in the conies. I'm not your audience. I'm not your child abuse audience. Get out of my face. Now, looking through this. I've got real issue with people who are using Facebook and the internet as a public shaming forum for their children. You're a crap parent if you resort to that. Oh my. Okay, it is 9:24. It is 9:24. We got 7 people watching. Would you all say hello? Type hello in the chat room, please. Please do that. Please do. Because I'd really like to think that I'm actually talking to people and not to. And 2 of them just left. Apparently, they saw me paying attention to them and decided to run for it. You people are cruel to me. Still haven't called the people I need to call. Still haven't. I don't know. I can't manage my life. I need a secretary. I don't know if I need a secretary. I need somebody who just. If anybody says you need a mommy, there's going to be pain. I get so tired of this. I've seen it just about every day this week. I open up the Facebook, and there's some peon to appeal to elegy to, oh, the glories of motherhood. Mothers sacrifice so much, and mothers do this, and mothers do that, and mothers is wives and mothers and sisters, and they never get to retire. And there's, I mean, you can almost hear the popping noise as they dislocate their shoulders to pat themselves on the back with all their might. It's the hardest job in the world. Being a mother, being a wife, being a woman. Yeah, I thought being, I thought being a redhead doing roofing in the middle of July, that was hard, Nah. I thought working in a coal mine was difficult, But all these poor mothers coming out of their kitchens and living rooms, coughing up black lust, that put me right, yeah. Of course, what they do is important. Nobody has ever said otherwise. In fact, it's been one of the appeals for hundreds of years. Women, why are you going out and getting in the workplace? Why are you getting involved in politics? Your kids, aren't your kids important? And the women didn't care. They wanted to go out and be, they wanted to be a big superstar. They wanted to be, they wanted to be big political hitters and swingers. They wanted to join the army. They wanted to do this. They wanted to do that. They wanted to, and now that they're everywhere except at home, they want to be praised for what was once considered the bare minimum of being a wife and mother. Men want to be praised. Men want to be praised for every little thing they do. They want, they do a household chore and they want a cookie. Well, they learned it from you. Really? Sorry, I grew up in the era where I grew up with the women running around first thing out of their mouths with "Who needs a man?" And now that they don't have a man, they're mad that the man isn't doing them what they want. But okay, quick question: is Tattletale aware that in Bailiff's home universe, Worm is just a story? Yeah. The entire alliance, they've all got the general idea that what is reality in one universe is fiction or fantasy in the other. It's not, it's not that hard a concept. Unless the writer wants it to be, in which case they overcomplicate the explanation. They're also aware that the fact that it's that his knowledge is not going to be ironclad. Now, consider this. You've seen this. They do a lot of self-insert stories in the fan fiction with Justice League, with DC Comics. Now, imagine it. You wake up in Metropolis. You wake up in an alley someplace, stagger out into the main street, and you look up and you see Superman flying by. Holy crap! You're in DC Comics. You're in Metropolis. You are now living in the same universe as Superman. But which Superman? The Superman you see in Super Friends from 60 years ago? From 40, 50 years ago? The Superman, the Superman from Justice League Unlimited? The Superman from Young Justice? The Superman from Justice League Action? The new Justice League cartoon they're coming out with? Or something, one of the continuities from the comics, which they have changed over and over and over again. How many reboots has DC and Marvel gone through? Think about it. You know the general picture. And the most common tropes. And you probably still know enough behind the scenes information to be dangerous. Or for somebody else to regard you as a threat and try and deal with you. But you don't know exactly what's going to happen where you are. What'll be regular, what'll be different, you don't know. The same story with they recognize the same story with Worm, is that even though Bayleaf knows the canonical Worm story, he knows the generalities. He doesn't, he could be dead wrong on many of the specifics. So it's a perpetual state of trust but verify. They trust him to be telling the truth about everything he knows, but they have to go and double check it to make sure it's true. For instance, one of the things that is canon in the original Worm story, the Endbringers, they're artificial constructs. They're super weapons, basically, created or controlled by the entities, who, due to the disastrous landing of when the entities arrived, are instead under the subconscious control of one of the superheroes. But anyway, one of the things that's canonical is that the Endbringers, they're made up of layers. Is that their outer skin is about as strong and tough as about aircraft aluminum. And the thing of it is, as you go down about every inch or so, the strength, the density of the material doubles. And there's about 15 layers on each limb, and the torso has about 40 or 50. Now, anybody ever done the chessboard problem? Where you lay a grain of rice on the first square of a chessboard, then on the next board you lay twice as, you lay 2, and the next square you lay 4, and the next square you lay 8, and each one you double the amount before. Has anybody ever done the math on that, or seen the end result? Basically, it would take more rice than in all of China and India to fill the final square. Canonically, these aliens, somebody did the math on it. Canonically, these aliens, these Endbringers, would have to be more dense. They would have to have more mass than the entire Milky Way galaxy each. Which is preposterous. It's ridiculous, and the original author's response to this ridiculous fact was like, "Yeah, wow, isn't it cool?" Let's just say I don't really have a lot of respect for Wildbow as a creator sometimes. Anyway. Despite it being canon, it's one of those things that you have to accept as just impossible. Any species capable of cramming the equivalent of the mass of an entire galaxy into one 10-meter tall monster, No. It just doesn't work. It's preposterous. So, in the Warcrafter, the point's going to be made that as canonical as it is, it's impossible. As canonical as it was in the original story, it's impossible for it to be real. That the only reason anybody believes is because the entities and the Endbringers are throwing a smokescreen. They're doing something to fudge the precogs and the thinkers and the superheroes with super intellect, keep them from realizing. They're basically trying to make themselves look omnipotent. And in reality, they're a lot less densely packed than that. Now, talking about other things is one of the things is that I really think Wildbow has a hostile relationship with math and science. Because one of the things he has is that he has several of the so-called precogs, the people who are capable of forecasting the future. His explanation for how that works is that basically their brains are hooked up. Their shards are basically giant supercomputers. And these giant supercomputers are so advanced and so big and so powerful, in whatever dimension they're hiding in, that they're capable of running a simulation, an atom-for-atom simulation of the real world, and scroll it forward to see exactly what happens moment by moment. In fact, that's his canonical explanation for how Coil's power works. In the story, Coil is a villain who basically he splits time. He comes to a fork in the road. He doesn't know whether to go right or left. He'll split time and take both of them. And when he gets to where he wants to go, he cancels the one that didn't take him where he wanted to go. And the waveform collapses, and the timeline he chose is the dominant one. Well, Wildbow's explanation is that he runs 2 simultaneous simulations of the future, of the entire world and everything in it, to predict exactly what will happen, moment by moment, as far into the future as he wants. Anybody who knows anything about math, about chaos theory, this is the point where they donkey laugh, okay? It's not possible. The sheer raw amount of data to run a single emulation of the entire world and everything in it it increases exponentially with every second. Chaos, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, Schrodinger's cat, however you want to put it. You can't perfectly simulate the future. That's why you can't accurately predict the weather. You can only make general predictions. The idea of him running down two simultaneous parallel lines into the future is more feasible than him trying to do a mental simulation of the entire universe. Are you able to hear me? Please say something. Okay, well, my point is that even if it, they're aware that he is from another timeline where their world is just a storybook, but they're also aware that his forecast for the future, his foreknowledge is limited, and it gets more limited as each day goes by. As the timeline changes, so they're aware of that, and they're also of the conclusion they're not going to have an existential crisis. I'm just a character in a book. No, none of that crap. That's stupid. Oh my. Excuse me. Now, did anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask? Anything else they'd like to know? I read a fiction that made a very interesting point that very few people have considered. Now, one of the canonical things about the powers, the shards that people get from the entities that give them their powers, is that they are optimized for adversity, for conflict. Their objective is to basically to drop 2 ants in a jar and shake it and see what happens. And so the shards tend to subtly push anybody with superpowers towards a more aggressive approach to everything. Unless they are using their powers consistently, the shards will push them towards more violent solutions. And one of the stories I was reading is it was a spin-off of Taylor Varga. If you know what that is, lucky you. Good story. Good fan fiction. Hundreds of chapters long already and still going. But anyway, Taylor Varga, she corners Contessa and Dr. Mother in the Cauldron base. And points out you never considered the fact, you're getting all your plans from Contessa's shard, the path to victory. You never considered the fact that even that shard is optimized for as much conflict as possible. It's not optimized to give you the best answer, only the one that will generate the most conflict. It's like, I'm sitting there reading this and I'm like, ding! Whoa, that's a point I hadn't even considered. The path to victory that the Contessa has gotten, she's not really worked it over, and so the shard is basically giving him the path that will result in the most costly victory they can possibly get. It's like, eek! Yeah, but the problem is that the Contessa's shard is not Eden's. Contessa got her shard before Eden died. And in fact, even as she was trying to kill Eden, Eden had already modified it so that she couldn't use the shard against Eden. That's why she needed Dr. Mother. Dr. Mother was the one that had to pull the trigger. That's canon too. But regardless, the entities have been using the same tactic and the same technique in every civilization, every world they have gone to. Give people powers, dump powers on them, shake the jar and see what happens. So even if they weren't optimized for it, her shards, Eden's shards, are still going to lean towards not the best solution, but the best one with the most, that will generate the most conflict. Bigger problem is basically they took the cauldron. Dr. Mother and Contessa basically took the first answer that the shard gave them and have been running with it ever since, making adjustments as on the fly as they go, but still never questioning the initial assumptions, never checking the initial question they asked, never checking the logic following through. This is the same problem that the entities have. They've been operating for millions and millions of years under the same assumptions they made back when they started. They're highly materialistic. They don't believe in anything beyond the material universe, and they apparently did not advance even to the point where they could contemplate chaos theory. Chaos theory is still not a non-existent math to them. So they still believe that they can emulate the entire universe. If they put enough data into their calculator, they'll be able to figure out everything that could possibly happen. When the nature of chaos effect says no, you can't. That's my working that's the working supposition I'm taking and going with, is that first of all they're materialist. the very, I agree with other, I agree with other writers that they have their crippling failure is their materialism. They believe that if it, they believe that if they haven't observed it, it essentially doesn't exist. And when confronted with things that they have never observed before, they tend to blot it out and put it in their blind spot. That can't be right. I'll push it over here. They're searching for a completely materialist solution to a materialistically derived problem. And they are still under the assumption that they can learn enough and gather enough data to emulate any possible situation. Which is what a lot of scientists used to believe for generations, for they realized that the universe was literally too complex and too mercurial to perfectly predict beyond a certain point. And of course, their shards, being their tools, have the same defective logic built into them. They've been running, if at first you don't succeed, redouble your efforts in the same direction. You see this thinking on the left in the real world all the time. Every single prediction by environmentalists over the past 50 years has been 100% wrong. Everything they predicted, everything they forecast. They predicted that we would all be having food riots in the United States and plagues of malaria from mosquito swamps. They predicted that New York would be underwater by the year 2000. They predicted this, they predicted that, and none of their predictions, none of them, they predicted that there would be no more glaciers. They're still there, and an exact same number that they were when Al Gore was a baby. They predicted that the North Pole or the South Pole would disappear. Guess what? They're larger than ever. They predicted this, and they've been wrong every single time. But no matter how many times they're wrong, no matter how many times the predictions are wrong, they push the data aside and keep making the predictions in the same way, using the same tools to make the same forecasts that fulfill their fantasy. Presented, presented with the evidence that their theory is a failure, they redouble their efforts to prove it true. No, they redouble their efforts to force everybody else to agree with them. They've already convinced themselves that it's true, and nothing else will convince them otherwise. As the dog returns to its vomit, and the pig returns to the mire, and the finger of the fool goes wobbling back to the fire, over and over and over again. This is the story. It's been one of the side notes of my life, as I've always pondered what is it specifically that makes somebody change their mind about anything. Because human beings are incredibly gifted at denial, breathtakingly so. A hamster put in a cage, presented with a button. The hamster pushes the button and gets an electric shock. Whoa, hey, never going to touch that again. Human beings, same situation. Psst, oh, well, it won't do it twice. Psst, third time's a charm. Psst, Do I have any plans for any of the more obscure worm factions like the Elites or the Sleeper? I got to tell you that Wildbow, he wasn't satisfied at screwing his world up. He had to throw in every possible, suckitude that he could, Oh, and just in case you think that this isn't enough, we'll have a few other doomsday cults and monsters and horrors and things scattered around the globe. But some of these are going to be dealt with. Some of these are going to be dealt with in direct fashion. Others are going to be dealt with them indirectly. One of the things that I think is going to be a surprise for a lot of people is the outcome and fate of Accord. For those who don't know, Accord is a villain, a supervillain in Worm. He lives in Boston, and he's a super genius. He's a super genius thinker, and his hang-up is perfection. Everything has to be perfectly symmetrical. Everything has to be, just everything just perfect. He's like, picture OCD on crack, or rather OCPD, and he has a plan for everything, and plans on tops of plans, and loopholes on top of loopholes, inside of loopholes, with loopholes on the side, and his base is booby trapped, from the gravel on the roof all the way down to the basement, and he's meticulous about everything. And the few people he has working for him are all capes. They have been drilled and regimented to the point where everything they do is just machine precision. He's that obsessed. And like another writer, I consider him to be the most dangerous sort of evil in that world. Because, you see, the reason he became a villain is because he came up with a plan to fix the whole world. To end world hunger, to stop wars, and, get the entire world working like a Swiss watch. And he couldn't get anybody to listen to him because he was a frickin' nut. And so he became a villain so that he could eventually force his picture of perfection and utopia on the world once he gained enough money and power and influence. He's one thing that Bayleaf is going to be very obsessed about removing from the picture. And not just for the abstract reasons. There's going to come up, something's going to crop up fairly soon that Accord is going to put himself in the crosshairs for the Alliance. He's going to make a stupid move and make a stupid threat, and it's going to cost him. The reason, let me put it this way: how many of you have ever played Sim City? There is one man who is, you'd have to look him up. I don't know where his site is on the internet. SimCity 2000. He literally created the perfect city. It took him years. It took him years of meticulous work. Literally. And he designed the city, made its layout, its laws, its taxes, everything, so that everything hummed along in perfect symmetry. And it will keep running indefinitely. Well, the thing of it is that it sounds, fantastic, right? Utopia, right? until you look at some of the metrics. The lifespan in his city is 40 years. The happiness quotient is in negative numbers. He's basically built a functioning... He basically used the rules of SimCity to create a dystopia on the order of 1984 or worse. Oh, it works perfectly, so long as you don't mind being a human ground between the gears. And that's the sort of person that Accord is. You get somebody like that with that kind of obsession of symmetry and balance and perfection, and making a perfectly working system. They're not going to care about the people in the system. As far as they're concerned, people are just grease in the gears. Like people who design a house, and like somebody who designs a skyscraper and is outraged that actual human beings will live in it. Even if he could get the system to work, which is assuming, once again, that he has some sort of cosmic superiority over the chaos effect. He would try and build his, that's why I consider Accord to be the next biggest threat after Zion and Cauldron. Because he would build a utopia and it would eat itself. Just like every other utopia humanity has ever tried to build. Well, as for the Endbringers, the Simorg, she's in a repair cycle. The problem is she's sort of gridlocked. Okay, look, she already, as the Simorg, has conflicting orders. Her first, her prime directives from the Endbringers are to basically to stir up conflict and try to accelerate the grand experiment. Basically to keep the jar of ants shaking. Like all the other Endbringers, that's their main job. That's the reason they exist. To generate strife, conflict, cause more people to trigger with shards, and to force them to maximize their efficiency through conflict. However, she is also the shard that controls her and the other Endbringers was never supposed to go out of the control of the entities. Unfortunately, it did. It ended up in Eidolon, the hero with the hero with the Swiss Army knife superpowers. And subconsciously, he has been directing them to provide him with a worthy adversary. So she's been running on these conflicting orders, trying to fulfill her main directive while also fulfilling her secondary directive, which unfortunately both have the same weight because they're both supposed to be coming from the entity. Now, to top this all off, she has just gotten her ass whooped. Profoundly. In ways that her programming say are impossible. And her prime directive, again, says, in any case where she is hit with a threat like that, she's supposed to go in, all guns blazing and wipe it out instantly. But again, she can't because of conflicting orders. She's basically sitting there having a blue screen. She's sitting out in orbit. In fact, she's so conflicted that it has slowed down her self-repair systems, while they dedicate more and more processing power to trying to figuring a way out of this horrible mare's nest of paradoxes. Well, the thing of it is that Eidolon is a member of Cauldron, and they deserve to be put on trial for all the things that Cauldron has done. Hurting people, experimenting on them, manipulating the world's governments from behind closed doors, that kind of thing. But the thing with the Endbringers, nobody knows it, not even him. He is, the shard that is controlling the Endbringers is cooked up to his subconscious. He doesn't even realize that he's controlling them. He wants more than anything to prove himself a worthy hero, to save the world, And that's why the shard he's hooked up to woke up the Endbringers. Just 3 of them. Just enough to, to give him a challenge. Well, according to canon, they were hit with nukes. It went badly. Let's see, Leviathan. He lives in the ocean and he moves too fast for a tactical nuke to hit. The Simurgh can simply redirect it to whatever target she likes. And the third one, what was his name? Not Leviathan. The third one controls is embedded in the earth. He controls energy. You hit him with a nuclear blast. He'll just absorb the energy and throw it out back into your face. In order to do even the damage even the cosmetic damage they have, the heroes have had to come in incredibly close. Bringing military-style weapons within range of the Endbringers just gives them something more to play with. For whatever reason, and as far as they're concerned, bringing in bulk weapons like is breaking the rules. So. Anyway. Trying to reaching, it's right there. There we go. Well, let me think. I'm trying to think, but nothing's happening. What am I going to do with Uber and Leet? I suspect that Uber and Leet are going to be put on board with the other. One of the things they've got for the future is that you'll recall that Adrian is pushing to Bayleaf is pushing to have a seminar exploring the weaknesses of the Endbringers. He's basically going to try and bring in every tinker he can under a big tent with the information he has and work on designing some Endbringer killers. If he can get that far without Cauldron or any of the other organizations with their own agendas sticking their oar in. That's one of the things is that I've been noodling over is this. Taylor is still supposed to be instrumentally important in some fashion to victory over Zion. But she's been sidelined by Bayleaf, unintentionally. As a writer, I've been trying to see how to move Taylor back towards the center of stage. As it's not her power. This was one of the main things in her original story is that it wasn't her powers that made her so much a terrible. Made her so much an important influence or a terrible threat. It was first of all. Her strategic thinking, her tactical thinking. First of all, her tactical thinking. Second of all, her ability to leverage her powers, whatever they were, to the best effect. And third, her willingness to escalate. She was protective of the innocent. She was, kind and compassionate. She was a decent person with a with an enormous weight of conscience. She took so many guilt trips. She might as well have gotten freaking flyer miles. But she was also fantastically ruthless when it came down to it. She didn't care about what was a heroic image. She reached a point very quickly where she did not care whether it was something heroic to do or not, or whether it was something a villain might think. Oh, she would if it would get the job done, she would do it. Which, by and large, that ruthless streak fits in quite well with her abilities as a rogue now, and as a worgen. Even barehanded and buck naked, she'd be a deadly threat. I'm trying to see how to put her intellectual side, the master strategist that was in the story back up on stage, because up to this point, Bayleaf has been doing everything, and it's already almost killed him once. and I think that he might be, after the next couple of rounds, he may be in a point where he'll have to throw everything into her lap and say, here, take care of this, because I've reached the end of my rope. Somewhere in the story, I'm going to have to take them all past a place where Bailey's predictive powers, quote unquote, or his foreknowledge is useful. Something that happens that didn't happen in the story is probably something that's going to throw him off big time. Because even with even with all the variations in canon, there's a certain they call it, writers call it the stations of the canon, where a fan fiction goes through certain events in a certain sequence, just like the original work did. Something is going to have to come at him out of left field. Something that he wasn't predicting, something that he wasn't expecting, and something that his foreknowledge did not predict. His initial mission was summed up as save the girl, save the world. And now he saved the girl. Now he has to figure out how to place the girl so she can save the world, and how it is she's supposed to do that. Art. Everybody runs to the Slaughterhouse 9 for a, real Godzilla moment anymore. I don't know, because that's the first thing everybody thinks of. So that's the first thing that Bailey would be preparing for. Everybody knows about the Slaughterhouse 9. But those others you pointed out, the Elite, the Teeth, maybe something strictly out of left field from those directions. I don't know yet. It just basically has to be something he's not prepared for. Not something that that not even hypothetically he's prepared for. He knows about for instance, Bakuda, crazy bomb lady. He knows about Lung. He knows about the Slaughterhouse 9. He knows about the Endbringers. He knows about Cauldron. He's managed to stay one step ahead by having a card up his sleeve. He's managed to stay in the game by having a card up his sleeve for each of them. Ready to go at any moment. The reason he survived Cauldron is because in the process, when he was building all his gear, he stockpiled a bunch of robots, weapons, and bots, weapons, and explosives, along with a teleporter to drop them in Cauldron's lap at the first opportunity. He's ready for Cauldron. Kaiser surrendering, that's not going to happen. Just randomly changing things doesn't work if they don't work with the story. Kaiser surrendering is not something Kaiser would do. That was one of the, as one person said, Worm, the original online serial story. Worm is basically the poor protagonist being dragged from one Godzilla threshold moment to another. And what they mean by Godzilla threshold is a TV trope term for when things have gotten so bad that unleashing a giant 30-story radioactive lizard on the city would not marketably make things worse. And for Taylor, it's just been about just like that for every episode in her story. They take out Coil. Coil releases Echidna on the city. They destroy Echidna. Echidna's clones reveal the secret of Cauldron to the world, and all the Case 53s in the Protectorate throw in the towel in outrage, and then the Endbringers attack, and it just every time she turns around, boom, 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 it gets worse. And then the Slaughterhouse 9 show up after the Endbringer, and now it has to be something that would make sense within the context of the story. Just randomly changing things, whether it's having Kaiser just boom surrender out of the blue, or just randomly popping an Endbringer. Why would they show up? Why would the Endbringer show up? The main intelligence coordinator for the Endbringers, the Simurg, is down for the count. She's busy doing a recompile and reboot. And trying to figure out how to fulfill her prime directives without destroying the planet. See, that's what everybody forgets, is that the Endbringers aren't there to destroy the planet. They're there to put it into the pressure cooker. I'm tinkering with a few ideas. I think of a few ideas. Well, we'll see where it goes. One of the things in the next chapter is that Coil's going to find out he's not nearly as clever as he thinks he is. No, she can't call on anyone. She is recompiling. She is literally in a complete breakdown and rebuild and repair stage. And that's been slowed to a crawl because of the fact that her programming isn't designed to cope with the paradoxes she's been hit with. So she's not going to make an early appearance or have a guest star pop out of the woodwork. She's down for the count. Yep. Well, okay, it is, let's see, it is 10:30, well, 10:24. It's dark outside, and it's scary. But I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I'm going to try and get a proper amount of sleep tonight so that I can get up tomorrow, do something, and then run a live stream again. Get back on the wheel. Got to get the hamster back on the wheel. So, Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. You all take care of yourselves, okay? Good night and God bless.